Let's take a look at how markets in East Africa are performing today. And we start off by looking at the NSE, again closing above the 5,000 mark, firmer by 0.67%. And if we pull up the data on the shilling to see how that is performing, we see that's slightly softer against the US dollar, trading at 86.65. That's down by 0.06%. To get some more insight into the Kenyan markets now, we are joined by Aly Khan Satchu, CEO of Rich Management. Aly Khan, thank you so much for making the time to join us. Of course, again, we're seeing the bourse again edging up 0.67% yesterday, closing again above the 5,000 mark. Do you see this bullish run as something that is set to continue?
I had a target of about 5% in January, and actually we've had nearly 3/4 of that rally already in the all share. I think we're going to have a strong January. I think there's a lot of money that's come into frontier and sub-Saharan African indices, and I think this will continue to propel sub-Saharan African equity markets higher. Obviously, South Africa is an exception because of the gold component and because of the weak rand. The rand is at the bleeding edge of the Fed taper when it comes to Africa. So I think that's slightly different. But between South Africa and North Africa, I expect a robust start. We've seen it start very, very quick out of the blocks. In Nairobi, we're up nearly 3.5%, and it's not even halfway through January.
What impact should we be anticipating on the Kenyan market, and particularly on the shilling, Aly Khan, in light of the unwinding of quantitative easing? Is it going to be as significant as we've seen in other markets such as South Africa?
Not at all. I think if you look through last year, the South African rand exhibited a very high beta. That spilled over into this year. Like you said, I think we're headed to 11 like a hot knife through butter on the dollar rand, and that's going to remain weak until we see during the tapering effect. The shilling has been actually very well behaved all through 2013. I think we're going to remain in an 84, 88, 50, 89 market through the year. I don't see anything extremely dramatic unless we get knocked sideways left field like we did at Westgate. But even that, the shilling was actually very, very firm through that entire situation as well. Real interest rates high, will be coming down once the government issues the Eurobond, and I think that will also be a catalyst for more participation in the equity markets as well.
Aly Khan, of course, if we look at the counters, Safaricom moving over 24 million shares yesterday. I mean, that is a significant number. I'd like you to perhaps just start off by talking to us about what's happening there, why we're seeing such significant moves, and then we'll move on to some of the concerns around the licensing issues that have come up yesterday.
So firstly, Safaricom, obviously, it's the bellwether stock at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. It's crossed 400 billion shillings in market cap. That's about 20% of the all share is made up of Safaricom. And, you know, it's been in a bull run since 2012, registered 115% total return last year, up just shy of 10% already this year, closed yesterday at 11.70. My price objective is 13.50, and that is coincident with the release of the full year results. That's about 4 months away. And I think essentially the markets are underestimating the steepness of the data trajectory. We're at an inflection point on this front. Kenya is a laboratory experiment when it comes to data consumption, and I think that's going to surprise investors to the upside and drive the price higher to that objective of mine of 13.50. You mentioned there is some noise coming out of the CCK. That's the nature of the game in Africa. You're always butting heads in these sorts of situations. Safaricom and Bob Collymore extremely effective at navigating through this kind of interference. I don't see it as a big issue. I think Safaricom has led the all share this year, will continue to lead it for the next couple of months, and the story remains very much intact. It's a cash machine. It's throwing off cash. First half results, they indicated that they were going to increase the dividend payout, and therefore I think it's going to continue to attract investors all around the world. It's really been it's been investors, global investors, who have taken a real shine to Safaricom over the last 24 months.
Before I let you go, Aly Khan, very quickly, your comments on the Nakumatt ShopRite deal. Are we likely to see Nakumatt and other retailers really playing their role now as opening up the East African markets, as we know that deal is happening with the acquisition of ShopRite stores in Dar es Salaam?
So I think Nakumatt caught everybody off guard. Most people were looking at Nakumatt as seeking an investor, but I mean, clearly they're not cooling their heels. They're moving forward. I think it was a very smart and strategic and clever purchase and added value to Nakumatt going forward, and potentially as an acquisition target somewhere down the road. There's plenty going on. Of course, we've had Massmart sniffing around Naivas for a long time. I could have told them 4 months ago to stop bothering with that. I think they should have looked at Uchumi, which is listed on the stock market, liquid stock, and I think that would have been a much better way to enter the East African market. I think with Naivas, they got caught up in a family feud, and really they're probably wasting their time. Very exciting sector. Nakumatt, obviously the leader. They've also got paid out some money for the Westgate scenario. You've got Uchumi in there, you've got Massmart sniffing around, and then you've had Nakumatt very cleverly going and taking ShopRite out of Tanzania. Lots of interest, lots of activity. Continue to see that trend playing out over the next 12 months.
Aly Khan, thank you so much for joining us. But very quickly before I let you go, do you drive a BMW by any chance?
I don't. It's tough driving those sorts of very nice cars around Kenya because our roads aren't brilliant. I have a 4x4, which is a little bit more practical for me.
Of course, that is on the back of the conversation with BMW South Africa. We'll be definitely giving them that feedback that if they do extend or intend to extend their footprint in Kenya, they should perhaps look to send their new X5 model, which is coming out at the end of the year. And maybe you might be interested in that. Thank you so much for making the time to join us.
That's
Aly Khan Satchu, CEO of Rich Management.